Fraction and decimal equivalents. For fraction and decimal equivalents, you want to remember that everything is based out of 100, like 100%. For example, a grade, if you were having like a math test, if you answered 100% of the questions correctly, you answered all correct. So everything's based out of 100. So when you have your denominators, you need to relate them to 100. For example, let's look at 1/2, okay? And I want to think, what do 2 and 100 have in common? Well, 100 divided by 2 is 50, okay? 100 divided by 2 is 50, or 2 times 50 is 100. And whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. So 50 times 1 is 50, which means that 1/2 is equivalent to 50 hundredths. And for the tenths and the hundredths, I just say the fraction and write the decimal, 50 hundredths. Let's do 1/4. And this only works for halves, fourths, fifths, tenths, really the even numbers, which is what the fourth graders have to know. All right, so we're going to set it equal to 100. What do I do to 4 to get it to 100? Well, if I think money, I'm thinking of $1. And what do I need 4 of to get to $1? 4 quarters. That's 25. Okay, so 4 times 25 gives me 100. And whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. So 25 times 1 gives me 25. So 1/4 is equivalent to 25 hundredths. Right? Say the fraction, write the decimal, 25 hundredths. Two fourths. Everything's equal to 100. It's an even number, so we'll try this. 4 quarters equal $1. And whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 25 or 2 quarters would be 50 cents. So 2/4 is equivalent to 50 hundredths. Say the fraction, write the decimal. Three-fourths. Set it equal to 100. 4 quarters equal $1. And whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 25 times 3, or 3 quarters, is 75. So 3/4 is equivalent to 75 hundredths. Say the fraction, write the decimal, 75 hundredths. Four-fourths. Set it equal to 100. 4 quarters. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 25 times 4, or 4 quarters, is $1, or 100 pennies. 100 hundredths, you would technically just write it as 1. Fifths. You should think, what do 5 and 100 have to do with each other? Well, 5 goes into 100 20 times. That's because 5 times 2 equals 10. So if I have 5 times 20, that would be 100. So 5 goes into 100 20 times. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 20 times 1 is 20. So 1/5 is equivalent to 20 hundredths. Say the fraction, write the decimal, 20 hundredths. 2/5. 5 goes into 100 20 times. Whatever I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. 20 times 2, or 20 plus 20, gives me 40. So 2/5 is equivalent to 40 hundredths. Say the fraction, write the decimal. 3/5. Set it equal to 100 because 5 is a multiple of 100. I'm sorry, 5 is a factor of 100. 5 goes into 100 20 times. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 20 times 3, 2, 4, 6, and then the 10, 60. 3/5 is equivalent to 60 hundredths. Say the fraction, write the decimal, 60 hundredths. 4/5. Set it equal to 100. What do 5 and 100 have to do with each other? Well, 5 goes into 100 20 times. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 20 times 4 is 80. So 4/5 is equivalent to 80 hundredths. Say the fraction, write the decimal. For tenths, you simply say the fraction, write the decimal. That's 1/10, 1/10. 2/10 equals 2/10. 3/10 equals 3/10. 4/10 equals 4/10. 5/10 equals 5/10. 6/10 equal 6/10. For the tenths and the hundredths, you say the fraction, write the decimal. 7/10 equals 7/10. 8/10 equals 8/10. 9/10 equals 9/10. Let's say you have 35 hundredths. Because it's a hundredth, you say the fraction, you write the decimal, 35 hundredths. Earlier, I did the problem 3/5. Let me write it up here. And we said that 5 is a factor of 100, and 5 goes into 100 20 times. And whatever we do to the denominator, we have to do to the numerator. 20 times 3 is 60, which means that 3/5 is equivalent to 60 hundredths. For some reason, students like to say that 3/5 equals 35 hundredths. But here's what 35 hundredths looks like as a fraction. Let's write it this way. So if you remember, 5 goes into 100 20 times. 20 times 5 is 100, but 20 times 3 is not 35. So 3/5 cannot equal 35 hundredths. Some students like to do like 1/2 equals 1 2/10. Okay, well, one thing that sticks out to me is this is a half, and this is greater than a whole. There's no way that 1/2 can be equal to a whole. This is 0, and this is at least 1. But if we remember, what do 2 and 100 have to do with each other? Well, 2 goes into 100 50 times, and then 50 times 1 is 50. And then if we remember 1 and 2/10, that's a tenth, so we would say the decimal and write the fraction. As you can see, 50 hundredths does not equal 1 and 2/10.